Rain hammered down on the forest canopy, dripping through leaves in cold rivulets that slid down the back of my neck. The ground beneath me had turned into a treacherous, sucking mud that clung to my boots and tried to pull me under with every step. My breath fogged in the damp air, the mist coiling low along the forest floor like something alive, curling around my ankles before vanishing into the darkness. The trees loomed high, their trunks slick with moss, and every creak of a branch felt amplified in the oppressive stillness. There was no wind, no rustling of leaves, just the distant, rhythmic patter of water hitting the earth. But beneath that, I could feel something heavier than silence, a kind of pressure that made the air thick and difficult to draw into my lungs. My flashlight's beams struggled against the darkness, barely carving out a few feet of visibility, before the shadows swallowed it whole. Every direction looked the same. Endless, blackened shapes of trees, some twisted unnaturally, as though they had grown in pain. Somewhere in the distance, a single drop of water landed with a splash in a pool I couldn't see, and the sound made my skin tighten. I could almost swear it wasn't just the forest watching me, but something else. Something that knew exactly where I was and was in no hurry to make itself known, because it knew sooner or later I would have to come closer on my own. The beam of my flashlight swept downward, cutting through the mist and catching on something pale against the wet, black soil. At first, I thought it was just a branch stripped bare by weather, but as I crouched closer, the truth hit me with a nauseating force. A long bone, white and slick under the rain, jutted out from the mud, its surface marred with deep teeth marks. My stomach turned as I realized it wasn't the lone juice beyond. It half-buried lay another and another. Clumps of wet flesh still clung to them, ragged and torn, as though ripped away in a frenzy. The rain was washing thin rivulets of diluted blood into the soil, the faint metallic smell rising with the steam from the earth. I reached out without thinking, fingertips hovering just inches away, and the cold radiating from the bone felt unnatural, as if it had been left here not hours ago, but moments. Around the edges of the clearing, the mud was churned and uneven, smeared with prints that didn't match any animal I knew, each had narrow, each ending in sharp points that had pierced deep into the ground. The sight of them made my throat tighten. They led in erratic circles, some overlapping, as though whatever had been here hadn't walked away, but had stayed pacing, watching. My ears strained against the rain, and for a second, I thought I heard something wet shift just out of the light's reach, like the drag of meat against sodden earth. The beam wavered as my grip tightened, the cold seeping from the bone into my hand, even though I hadn't touched it. My mind screamed at me to move, but my legs felt locked, as if stepping away would only bring me closer to whatever had left this behind. I caught movement in the corner of my vision. A smear of darkness gliding between the trees, faster than my eyes could follow. My flashlight jerked toward it, and for the briefest instant, the beam caught something tall, thin, its limbs too long for its body. The skin, if it had any, seemed to ripple like shadow caught in a current. I blinked, and its form shifted, the edges twisting as if it couldn't decide what it wanted to be. One heartbeat, it looked like a man, shoulders hunched, head cocked unnaturally to one side. The next, it hunched lower, the spine jutting at sharp angles, fingers stretching into claws that scraped the bark of the nearest tree. But its eyes never changed to pits of glowing red that burned through the rain, locking on me with a hunger so raw it made my stomach churn. They didn't blink, didn't waver, and though the thing stood at least 20 feet away, I could feel the weight of its gaze pressing into my skull. My breath came faster, steam billowing in the cold air, but my body refused to turn away. The creature shifted again, its outline breaking apart into smoke before pulling itself back together, as though it was testing shapes, deciding which one would frighten me most. My fingers tightened around the flashlight, the beam trembling across the trunks. But wherever the light touched, it seemed to darken rather than illuminate. The creature tilted its head further, its mouth stretching slowly, far too wide for a human face, revealing jagged shapes inside not teeth, but something far worse, as if the darkness itself had grown fangs. My instincts screamed at me to run, but the sound of the rain was swallowed by the pounding in my ears, and those eyes kept pulling me. Eni stumbled into the clearing, my boots slipping on the wet grass, and there it was, a shack, leaning and broken, its wood swollen and blackened. From years of rain, the roof sagged, letting water pour through in thin streams, and the door hung crooked on rusted hinges. I didn't think. I just pushed my way inside, slamming the door shut behind me, the thud echoing in the small, enclosed space. My lungs burned as I tried to catch my breath, but the air inside was thick, heavy with a stench that clawed at the back of my throat. I lifted my flashlight, and the beam swept across the walls. That's when I saw them, skins stretched and nailed in uneven sheets, sagging under their own weight. Some were animal pelts, coarse and matted with old fur, but others were unmistakably human, the texture wrong in a way that made bile rise in my throat. The seams where flesh had been cut away were rough, jagged, as though whoever had done it had no interest in precision. My stomach twisted, and my hand shook, making the light jump from one horror to the next. The floor was no better. Patches of blood had long since dried to a deep brown, but newer stains gleamed wet and fresh, seeping into the warped wood. In one corner, a pile of bones lay in a loose heap. Some small enough to be from animals, but others had the familiar curve of human ribs, the rounded caps of knees, the empty sockets of skulls. They weren't scattered like refuse. They were arranged almost lovingly, stacked in neat rows as if part of a collection. My breathing grew shallow, every inhale pulling the rancid air deeper into my lungs. Something about the space felt wrong in a way. I couldn't explain it. Wasn't just what I could see, but what I could feel. It was as though the shack itself had absorbed everything that had happened inside it. The walls seemed to breathe in slow, steady pulses, expanding and contracting ever so slightly. The dim corners seemed deeper than they should be. Shadows, pooling thick like oil, as though something could be hiding inside them, crouched low and watching. The rain on the roof was muffled now, swallowed by the damp wood, and with that quiet came the faint sound of something shifting just beyond the door, too heavy to be the wind, too deliberate to be chance. The floor gave way beneath me so suddenly I barely had time to shout. My hands clawed at the rotting boards, nails scraping splinters, but the wood tore apart like dam paper, and I plunged into darkness. I hit water waist deep, the impact sending a warm splash up my chest and face. At first, I thought it was just muddy rainwater, but the smell hit me thick, metallic, and sour, the unmistakable stench of blood. My breath caught in my throat as the heat of it seeped into my clothes. I staggered, my boots sinking into something soft beneath the surface. Shapes that shifted under my weight as though I was stepping on boadies. The flashlight had slipped from my hand, its beam cutting across the rippling red surface in a slow spin. In its light, I saw more than I wanted to, limbs drifting just below the waterline, hair tangled in the current, a pale face brushing against my leg before sinking again. Panic surged, and I waded toward the beam, but something seized my ankle. The grip was ice cold and impossibly strong, fingers digging into my flesh with a force that felt like bone against bone. I kicked wildly, the water slapping against my skin, but the hold only tightened, pulling me down inch by inch. The surface broke beside me, and something rose from the depths. Its face was wrong, half of it little more than rotted tissue stretched over bone, the other half slick and alive, muscle twitching under pale skin. One eye hung half out of its socket, swaying with each movement, but the other burned with a deep, glowing red, locking onto mine. Its lips peeled back in a grin far too wide, exposing jagged, uneven shapes in place of teeth, and as it opened its mouth, I could smell the rot inside it. The voice that came out was wet, gurgling, each word bubbling through the blood in its throat as it whispered, "This forest is mine, and now so are you." Its other hand shot up, wrapping around my neck. The claws pierced instantly, warm lines of blood running down my collarbone, and my vision pulsed with every heartbeat. My arms flailed, striking at its face, but my blows barely moved it, as if the thing's body was heavier than stone, rooted deep into the unseen depths below me.
Please like and subscribe channel Fear Frequency for more horror stories. Thank you.